how many people here have been to Detroit? All right. Now, I'll ask it a different way. Who has heard any of these songs? Wait till I'm done, then raise your hand. Strings of Life, Clear, Rock to the Beat, Shades of J, Jaguar, Throw. All right, so you've been to Detroit in some way or form. You know what we're talking about musically. Carl, I want to kind of start off with what is Detroit Love about, because this is the newest thing that you are working on as far as one of your projects. You have many. I'm going to relax too.
Detroit Love is just the respect for what's been happening in Detroit musically, what's been happening in Detroit. I think the best way really to represent Detroit is with a project called Detroit Love. And what Detroit Love isn't just having Detroit guys play. It's like having people who have the mutual respect for the movement of music that has come from Detroit, the movements that have been extremely strong, extremely innovative and inspiring to people. So on the last one, we had me and Mike Banks, who was supposed to be here, but unfortunately couldn't make it. And Moody Man we had at the last one, but we also had DJ Deep, who's a French DJ from Paris, who is incredible and also has like so much respect for what happens in Detroit, and it just made sense, to do that. So the next one that we're doing at Movement is with Detroit artists, but we also have Corrupt Data, who is on my label, that's from the UK. But for the most part, I think everybody on the stage is from Detroit. Think about it. Yeah.
So in Miami this past March, you and Mike played together, and I'm curious, because we're not going to be able to see him and you perform here, but what happens on stage when you and Mike play together?
Mike and I, we get together almost like if it was a couple of guys jamming, right? Because Mike plays keys. He has a couple of machines, like a bass machine and a drum machine, and then he just kind of starts to create, and I mix in and mix out of him. But we have this thing where we just kind of bump off of each other, and I give him enough space so that hopefully I can get inspired from him, and then re-inspire him to take the next phase of when he gets mixed in.
You've been a champion of aliases and having multiple musical personalities. I've seen you play in lab coats. I've seen you play a lot of different ways, but what is it about the alias? Because Detroit has a lot of characters. There's Electrifying Mojo, which no one's seen, but he inspired people through the airwaves. George Clinton, who sat on the stage a year ago and had a lot of great stories, and Bernie Worrell was in the audience.
Great.
And we learned a lot about, the character, and it was theater. It was so much more than just the music. But that's obviously tipped you to be a character.
Right. Yeah. I've been fortunate that I could change aliases and characters, like if I was getting my hair cut in a different way every day or restyled. I read once, and I've said it before, that I think it was a book on Sun Ra, Space is the Place, and they mentioned how Sun Ra called himself that because of the kind of escape from the shackles and the mental shackles of slavery. And that is kind of common within African American people to want to have aliases, to kind of change themselves in some way, hence people changing their names to African names or whatever. And I don't know if George Clinton was doing that on purpose when he did Parliament and Funkadelic and Parlettes and everything, but that root of it made sense to me. But what inspired me to do Paperclip People, to do Interzone Orchestra, to do 6ix9ine, to do Peace and FRS and all this stuff was because of George Clinton, I think more than anything, because George Clinton had done something that I never knew existed before, which was he had 2 different bands on 2 different labels, and it was the same guy basically, you know. So he had Parliament on Casablanca, and he had Funkadelic on after Westbound was on Warner Brothers, and you know, it just made sense to me.
Do you feel that Detroit techno, like Motown, has developed beyond the sound into a style? Is it shared outside of Detroit the way you hear it?
I think with Motown, not only was that sound created and nurtured in Detroit, but part of the nurturing was because of the musical competition that was coming from other places. So even the Beatles covering Motown stuff, I think, helped to push the Motown sound even further. And that's the same with Detroit techno, is, you know, when you have people like B12 and guys like that that are doing music that sounds like a Derek May record from 1988 or whatever, and that helps to like push the sound further. It's like, you know, through imitation, there's like this kind of respect through that imitation, but that imitation comes back to us, and then we're like, oh man, they just did that. Let's try to do something, and then, you know, try to push it further, like, you know, change our style to make it so that nobody's quite able to imitate it or quite to do it in the same way. When I got to England, and then I really started realizing how the movement was going and how the scene was going, you know, I definitely had to think quick and learn and pay attention to what was going on, you know, because there was like all this really amazing stuff that was happening. It was like acid was like, you know, really big at the time, or just kind of falling down. But Inner City was the big group from Detroit. They did this live thing at Town and Country Club, and then I think that same year it was Pump Up the Jam came out. I was in London for that. That was incredible to see David Morales play Pump Up the Jam at Heaven. You know, it was crazy. Or with Soul to Soul, like I mentioned before. You know, I was in London right when that was going down, and you know, I think that first experience, that first 3 months that I was in London, as well as the other times that I went, really had a huge impact on how I made music and how I molded the sound and how I molded what I did.
I'd like to talk about the U.S. and the scene there as well, because you've had this success in Europe first, come back. I know you played Coachella this year. You know, what's it like playing a huge festival in America versus even the festivals over here? Or do you feel like something's changed?
You know, it was amazing. Coachella was amazing because I was in my trailer, knocked out, while Madonna was kissing Drake, and I missed the whole thing. Good Lord! Oh man, that would have been amazing. That would have been incredible, and I'm, you know, knocked out. No, it was great because I'd done Coachella years ago as Interzone Orchestra on like a small outdoor stage, so it was nice to come back to do it. And coming on after Tales of Us and before Danny Tenaglia was like something that usually doesn't happen for me. So Tales of Us, we played together here in Europe. You know, last time I played with them before that was at a Warehouse Project, I think in Manchester. But Tenaglia, I never played with Tenaglia, so it was. I like that dynamic that's happening in the U.S. right now. That you can meet people in the U.S. that are your peers, but you just really don't see them in other scenarios. But as far as electronic music being appreciated in the U.S., it's been a long time coming. We were talking about it earlier, that it has had more of a rock image, the stuff that got over really big, and it's good now that you know, guys like Robert Hood can play in the U.S. and play festivals and do really great festivals, as well as people like Nina Kravitz coming over and playing, and of course Richie and Local Dice and Luciano and all those guys. It helps the whole scene when, no matter how big a guy is, I don't care if it's Steve Angelo playing in Las Vegas, I still think that's like a big step for the United States, because Las Vegas had been infamous for years for Elvis and, Frank Sinatra. So now you have electronic music. It might not be your favorite electronic music. It might be more commercial, but it's great that it's happening and that it's getting recognized.
It's wild. With the future, because you've been traveling a long time, more than 2 decades as a DJ, as a performer. You've been running a label for most of those years. What's that feeling you're still searching for? What keeps you on the road and keeps hungry?
So it's all just this kind of experimental research that I'm constantly doing. My life is R&D all day, all night, and I enjoy that. And when I have great results, I hope that the people appreciate the fact that I have great results from them being giving me the energy to find my way, to having the patience to let me, start off playing Rick James and ending with Bill Withers or something, instead of just being techno. And actually, the crowds these days, I think, are a lot more interesting and interested than say 10 years ago. Because it used to drive me nuts when people would come up and just do this in front of your face, trying to get you to pound it harder or whatever. And I don't understand what that means. You want me to play harder? You want me to play faster? What is it? But now it just seems like there's more patience. And I think guys like Seth Troxler help people to have a bit more patience, because, Seth will go in his direction and be unique, and the same thing with Ricardo Villalobos, I've seen gigs at Cocoon where it's just like he's just in another planet and the people are in another planet, and there's not that connection, but he's playing stuff that's just incredible. So that connection comes from your memories, like, oh, well, you know what, he played a little weird, but that one record that he played, that was incredible, and it makes it possible to, be able to have these journeys and not have to feel like you have to play, from beginning to end at 120, like percent, 120%. You could play, you could cool it out, you can just have some motion, have some love.
I want to just ask one more thing on the future. Sonically, where do you feel like today sounds like the future still, or does it sound like yesterday?
I have to say that regrettably, a lot of people sound like yesterday. Regrettably. I think that there is a wide space for one genius to come in and turn everything around. I think we need like a Kanye in techno or something, somebody who's just gonna come out and not only talk shit, because you could just sit around and talk shit all day, but somebody who actually delivers every single time, and does things that's innovative musically, but innovative artistically, that's outside of music.